All right, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another installment of the Manufacturers Efficiency webinar series. My name is Matt Wiseman, and I'm a certified exit planning advisor and business leadership coach. With me, of course, is Gina Tabasso of Barracuda B2B and Rich Bello of Schooley Mitchell. Today, I'm going to go through the 7 C's of leadership. Being a leader is not about the title you hold, it's about how you show up, how you react to challenges, how you empower others in the organization. So, what are the attributes that allow some to rise above and stand out as leaders in their respective organizations? Finding that out is the purpose of today's webinar. Our agenda for today is pretty straightforward. Before we jump into the 7 C's, I'm going to talk a bit about how leaders see opportunity. Then we'll go through the 7 C's before, which will take us to the end, and we'll get into discussion and Q&A. So, when you view this string of letters, what do you see? How does your mind break up the string into individual words? Some see the string like this. Opportunity is nowhere. On the other hand, others see it differently. Leaders, the best leaders, see opportunity all around and have a keen understanding of how to leverage it in the best way possible. And for the times when opportunity is not visible or apparent, then great leaders seek to create it. So, what is it about those individuals that gives them this ability? How are they able to see opportunity where others do not? How do they create opportunity when it doesn't exist? And those differentiators are referred to as the 7 C's of leadership. No one can naturally possess all seven. Sure, certain people are naturally courageous and creative. Some have a remarkable ability to concentrate. Myself, as someone, I'm someone who is used to being surrounded by a lot of family members, and therefore I've developed this ability to kind of tune out all the things going on around me and focus on what I'm trying to get done. Others, their traits take work, on the other hand. For example, no one is fully competent in a given field. That takes study and training and years of hard work, but it's possible to develop those traits. So we'll dig into the 7 C's and learn more about each one and how you can develop these skills. First up is clarity, and there's 3 parts to clarity. We'll get into each one. Leadership, but the first piece is being self-aware, knowing what you are good at, what type of work really engages you, how do you like to solve problems, and just the same, what are your blind spots? Knowing these things helps provide clarity about oneself. Now, knowing these things doesn't mean you only work on the things that you enjoy and that give you energy. It's about understanding all of these aspects about yourself and how they influence the way you lead. For example, a particular leader may be very good at taking action quickly, but he or she may not be so good at being collaborative, getting others involved in the decision-making process to find the best solution. A highly analytical leader may make really good decisions, but it may take them a long time to make those decisions. They need a lot of time to get the data to help them choose that ultimately good decision. Clarity allows us to use our strengths while managing our weaknesses. Within clarity, we also need to have clarity about our team and what are their strengths and weaknesses. We may have an employee that really values having greater responsibility. Another team member may value stability, recognition, the opportunity to develop new skills. Effective leaders are able to bring out the very best in each person while still holding each person accountable to meeting their obligations. This also requires creating that environment where people are comfortable raising issues, they're comfortable admitting their mistakes, they're comfortable asking for help. Knowing these things about your team allows you to put people in positions that leverage their strengths and keeps in mind their weaknesses, gives them the greatest chance to succeed because that's what's ultimately going to help your business be the most successful. And the third part of clarity is knowing your business. Who is your business's ideal customer? What problem are you trying to solve for them? And what does your company do really well that sets you apart? Many businesses try to go after every single customer or have far too many products and services, and these companies end up burning out because they are pursuing opportunities that don't align well with their strengths and weaknesses, or their strengths, I should say. Clarity helps a leader decide what to pursue and what to walk away from. It also helps employees make better decisions because they understand what matters most for the business. If your employees were each asked to state the strengths and weaknesses of the business, what are the core competencies? Will they all give the same answer? If not, then the leader may not be clear. They may not have clearly communicated to the entire organization what the core competencies are, what the strengths are, and who their target market is. Next up in the seven C's is competence. Competence means continually getting better at the leadership work and building the leadership your leadership skills. It doesn't mean that as a leader you need to know every fine detail of everything that goes on in the business, but it does mean that you need to have a sufficient level of knowledge for you to make good decisions. There's the reference on this slide to using a treadmill is important. That a tool does not, because you have a tool doesn't mean it's going to yield a result. You actually have to put it to use. That's true for the CRM you've invested in, the strategic plan you've developed, the new CNC tool you've purchased. If you're not putting them to use, then they're not providing any value to the organization. And the statement that the top 10% were once in the bottom 10% reminds us that competence is something that is built. It's something that takes time. No one's born being competent in their respective industry or area of expertise. They had to learn how to delegate, how to manage conflict, and how to develop employees to make the business better. Those are skills that come with time, that come with experience and with effort. Next is continuous learning. Competence is built on continuous learning. What made us successful at one stage of our career may not be what is going to get us through the next stage. However, if we're leveraging continuous learning effectively, then that will improve our chances of success in that next stage. And it requires a strategy. It's not about just consuming all the information that is presented to you. It's about figuring out what goal are we trying to achieve, what do we feel is a gap in our knowledge base, and then going out and finding sources that will help us address that gap. It could mean going out and doing more study about our respective industry, finding educational materials, attending courses, working with a mentor, and then converting that information into action. After all, if you gain a bunch of knowledge, but you don't then apply it to anything, there's no value to it. It means taking what you've learned and turning it into meaningful actions for yourself and for your business. Within continuous learning, I should say, continuous learning is a component of continuous improvement, and Kaizen is the practice of continuous improvement through small incremental changes. Yes, it can result in big breakthroughs, but really it's about taking very small steps one at a time to yield large improvements over an extended period. Um, it can be things like eliminating an unnecessary step in a process, shortening a feedback loop, um, reducing repetitive motion in a manufacturing process. This this process and the process involved is come up with a plan, apply it, see what the result is, and then tweak it or then standardize it. It's a plan, do, check, act cycle. Kaizen doesn't mean to be clear, Kaizen doesn't mean applying change for change's sake. It means that even when there is a process that is working, it's about being vigilant and open-minded to additional ways that could make it even better. Leaders are, who to practice continuous learning, who practice Kaizen, are also sure to involve the people involved in those processes, the people who do the work, because they're the ones who probably who definitely have the best understanding of it and probably have the best ideas about how to improve it. Next is constraints in the seven C's. A constraint is something that limits progress toward a goal. And the key to effectively addressing constraints is to identify root cause, not just the symptoms. For example, a company um, they may say, well, we need to generate more sales, when in reality, it's not generating more sales. It's that they don't have the production capacity they need to meet the sales they're bringing in. It could be that the quoting process is very slow, or that they're not good on following up, on leads. A focus on improving steps in a process that are not actually constraining it doesn't really improve the overall outcome. So focusing on one root cause at a time and just making small improvements, again, going back to the Kaizen, can yield, transformational performance. Um, it also should be noted, as it is on this slide, that the majority of constraints are internal, not external. Yes, external constraints are always going to exist, and a lot of times they are out of our control. Fortunately, the things that are in our control are the majority of the constraints, those internal constraints that we have influence over and can take action on to yield improved performance, yield better results. Creativity is not about just inventing the next novel product or service. It can mean finding unique ways to serve your customers, finding unique ways to execute a process, reduce cost, or remove a bottleneck. Um, an approach to arriving at a creative solution is to, clearly state a problem to a team of, a bunch of team members, and then ask them to just generate a list of possible solutions. Don't review the list one at a time, or generate the list and then talk about each solution as they come up. Just generate the entire list and then look at it collectively. The benefit of this is that you're seeing all possible solutions, and you're not killing them off one by one, and then or potentially seeing a solution when it comes up and choosing it, when in reality, if you had kept considering all possible solutions or looking at all the possible solutions at once, you would find the optimal one, as opposed to just choosing one that could solve the problem in a non-optimal way. So taking this type of approach will likely yield the best creative solution, and will also create a sense of safety for employees, that there's a process here that allows me to share my thoughts, and I'm not going to be criticized. I'm not going to be harshly critiqued for my idea. And again, going back to Kaizen, creativity is not about finding that big boom breakthrough. It can be just about unique, small tweaks that combine the existing knowledge you've got, your existing skills, people, resources, in a new way. Concentration. So many of us think that we're able to multitask, and in reality, we're just switching our concentration between a bunch of different tasks over and over and over again. Research by the American Psychological Association shows that switching carries a tremendous cost in terms of time and mental bandwidth. And this is especially true as the tasks become more complex. Good leadership understands this, and they understand the importance of devoting time to um, really focusing on the most critical and strategic work in the business, as opposed to just um, firefighting and tackling the next thing that screams the loudest. Instead of jumping, and there's a process to this. Instead of jumping right into something, head first, understand what you're trying to achieve, carefully lay out the steps, and then remove all the distractions that may be around you so that you can really focus on, provide devoted time to working on that problem. Being busy is not the same as being productive. Concentration means devoting our attention to um, those activities that have the potential to really make a difference, to really move the ball forward in a significant way. So the first six C's have a limited value if we don't act on them and put them to use. Courage is not the absence of fear. It means that you take responsible action in the face of fear or discomfort. Courage in leadership may mean having to have a difficult conversation with a team member, um, making a decision without having all the data you would like to have for making that decision. Courage can mean asking for help. It can mean delegating a task, a critical task that you would really prefer to you do yourself, but when, if your plate's too full, you've got to take some action. So delegate it to a trusted individual. It can mean, having to make the hard decision to stop doing something that you have done for a period of time and realizing that it's no longer working, and having to say, hey, we're going to stop providing this service, stop engaging these types of customers because it's not bearing fruit. And just to be clear, being courageous is not about being reckless. Clarity helps us understand the objectives, right? The first C, clarity, helps us understand the objective. Competence and learning help prepare us. Doing a constraint analysis helps us understand what our limitations are. Creativity helps improve the decisions we make, and concentration keeps us moving. But it's courage that enables us to actually take that next step and keep the business moving forward and advancing and improving. Sometimes courage means just sticking with it for just a little bit longer. At other times, it can mean accepting feedback from others that may be hard to hear, but accepting that feedback and then choosing to do something different, choosing to change direction. So those are the seven C's of leadership. The best leaders have more than just a natural ability. They are constantly um, trying to be aware of their gaps and limitations, and then taking action to improve and close those gaps. Great leaders also are aware of the gaps and limitations of those around them, and they're working to create opportunity to help them improve and help their businesses improve. Again, it's not just about striving for these huge leaps forward. It's about making 1% improvements to one or two of the seven C's every single day. If you as the leader, or excuse me, if your employees all did that every single day for a year, think of where you would end up at the end of that year. You would be far better than you were at the start. So, folks, for thank you again for joining us before we kind of wrap it up and move to Q&A and discussion. I just want to identify or point out our upcoming webinars. In September, Rich is going to talk about how to identify opportunities to save in your uniform and linen expenses. In October, Gina will talk about growing your existing customers before chasing new ones. In other words, finding ways to have your existing customers, spend more of their what they have available with you, as opposed to going elsewhere. And finally, I'll be back in November to talk about effective time management. This has been another installment of the Manufacturers Efficiency Webinar Series. Again, my name is Matt Wiseman, and my partners are Gina Tabasso and Rich Bello. If you want to learn more about what we do in our respective businesses or about this topic today or any of our previous topics, please use the QR codes on the screen to get a hold of us. And with that, I will open it up to some discussion. I do want to thank everybody, but Rich, Gina, any thoughts, comments, questions?
Yeah, Matt, good job as always. The one question that I had was with regards to constraints, and specifically when a constraint that a leader is facing has to do with personnel, either their direct reports or even their leadership. Like, what is, I guess, the balance? I'm sure each situation will kind of determine this to a degree, but what is the balance between handling or potentially eliminating the constraint if it's a coworker versus also trying to promote the continuing education and clarity that comes from that for that other person that may be a constraint at any given point in time.
Yeah, great question. I think it goes back to that being courageous and having that difficult conversation. It can be about having that difficult conversation with that individual, and identifying, helping them identify and see what the issue is. And I've done this, and what I found is often the individual doesn't realize that that they're causing an issue in the business, or that they're coming up short in their responsibilities. It can be about developing an improvement plan for them, and that they can then follow and helps them move forward. And sometimes, Rich, and I've been in this situation, it can be about again, having the courage to, fortunately ask the employee to move on, right? To find other employment. And I've had to do that. I took an organization through a pretty significant transformational effort, over a number of years, in specifically in the manufacturing and operations, section of the business. And there was an employee who just, despite my best efforts, training, putting processes and systems in place, they just could not make. They couldn't come along for the transformation, and we ended up finding another opportunity for that individual outside of the business, because they had great skills. It's just their skills no longer aligned with how we were running the manufacturing and operations portion of the business. So yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Rich. It's very situational. But I think it comes back to the courage, right? Having the courage and the creativity to address that situation with that individual, and help them move forward so that the business can move forward.
That makes sense.
I, I wanted to comment. I love this presentation. I never, honestly, before your presentation, had heard of the 7 Cs. And when I knew you were doing this topic, I looked it up a little bit. I found a really funny article about lessons from Genghis Khan
Yeah.
on the 7 Cs of leadership. And that was an interesting read. But and I saw that online in different places the seven C's are different. They may be
Yeah.
called a little different. And I know you had communication and collaboration was one as well that I saw a lot of online. And we talked about that in past sessions about not working in silos and how you have to work collaboratively. And I know, especially in manufacturing, we've talked a lot in the past about how leadership is shifting from like a top-down mentality to a more getting buy-in mentality and respecting people. And so I love that a lot of topics we've touched on kind of came full circle and came together in this presentation. So I just wanted to thank you. That's just what all of this reminded me of.
Yeah, that's a great thought, Gina. I hadn't thought about that, about how yes, our previous webinars are all kind of tied into this. And yeah, look, I I didn't invent the seven C's. It's been out there for a while, and it's been spun in different ways for sure. But yeah, I think when I think back to the best leaders, they all had the best leaders that I've had the privilege of working with or meeting. They've all had some they've all had the seven C's in various amounts, right? They were, some were particularly courageous, and others were, were extraordinarily creative. But they all had a mix of these traits that made them great, and they were all working to improve. I think that's what it really comes back to is working to improve all of these things and to get just a little bit better every single day. So, all right. Well, I really appreciate the comments and the questions, Gina and Rich, and thank you everybody for watching. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to having you join us on an upcoming webinar.